and RBS, but also three others, one outside the American Embassy in Grosvenor Square, another one outside the European Climate Exchange just down the road in Bishopsgate, where environmental protesters are trying to set up an overnight camp, and another one outside the XL Conference Centre as well. So lots to keep the police busy. Above us we've got a police helicopter which is trying to keep an eye from the sky on everything that's happening here, and at the moment, as you can see, we've got this police cordon in Threadneedle Street. It's a sort of double cordon really, in fact, and it's keeping the protesters, they say, from moving away from the area. The protesters we've been talking to saying they want to move out of here, but they're effectively being penned in by the police, and that is frustrating them, and we've certainly seen quite a few windows being smashed at the RBS building here.
That was Ben Brown reporting there from the City of London, and of course we will be back with Ben very shortly as we continue our coverage here on the BBC News Channel throughout the afternoon, not just of those events in the City of London and some of the other demonstrations that are planned, of course, but also of the political elements as world leaders are gathering here in London ahead of tomorrow's G20 summit. And with that in mind, President Obama has stressed the sense of urgency needed to tackle the worst economic crisis since World War II.
Although the main event is tomorrow, there's already been a lot of diplomatic activity with bilateral meetings to try to thrash out any problems and work on solutions.
Well, this morning, Gordon Brown and President Obama spent 2 hours in talks at Downing Street, and that was followed by a joint news conference.
President Obama said their discussions have been productive, but conceded that the nations involved would not be able to agree on every point as they negotiate on how best to tackle the global economic crisis.
Well, this lunchtime, President Obama met the Russian President, Dmitry Medvedev, and they've announced talks to limit the number of nuclear warheads that both countries hold.
And at around 4:30 this afternoon, the French Prime Minister Nicolas Sarkozy and the German Chancellor Angela Merkel will hold a joint press conference. Mr. Sarkozy's threatened to walk out of tomorrow's summit unless there's a deal on tough new regulation of global finance. This report from Paul Adams.
President Obama may not want to hog the limelight, but on this, his first overseas trip, that's just the way it goes. Whitehall locked down as the presidential motorcade, flown in for the occasion, sweeps into Downing Street. A businesslike wave at the start of a critical 2 days, a summit with the loftiest possible agenda. What are you going to achieve? A shouted question as the couples dance into position. If the president's famous body language alone could answer, it would say, plenty. For Gordon and Sarah, on a sunlit morning, the privilege of being the first Europeans to bask in a presidential glow that has yet to fade. A huge security operation in the capital today, but the crowds here come to greet, not barrack the president.
I love him very, very, very much. I would not have missed this opportunity.
I had to come down here. I've watched everything on television about him and wanted to see him in the flesh.
Another couple savouring the moment, the Foreign Secretary David Miliband and his counterpart Hillary Clinton, with plenty on their plate today. This huge gathering a chance to address a host of global issues. More warmth on display inside. With tough talking ahead, no qualms here about displaying the strength of the special relationship. The Prime Minister happy to be shepherded from his own room. Out of Downing Street's narrow confines and into the opulent grandeur of the Foreign Office, a chance for the two men to set out their stall.
Your first 70 days in office have changed America, and you've changed America's relationship with the world.
Plenty of mutual appreciation, and then this confident assertion from the host.
We are within a few hours, I think, of agreeing a global plan for economic recovery and reform.
And to those Europeans who worry about being steamrollered by Britain and America, words of reassurance and resolve from the President.
G20 nations are appropriately pursuing their own approaches. And as Gordon indicated, we're not going to agree on every point. I came here to put forward our ideas, but I also came here to listen, not to lecture. Having said that, we must not miss an opportunity to lead.
Determination then, and a sense of shared purpose. Two leaders who know that this meeting cannot be seen to fail. But others will have their say before the day is out. The summit hasn't even started. Paul Adams, BBC News.
Well, let's return to those scenes now on the streets of the City of London, specifically where, if you've been watching throughout the morning, you'll be aware that protesters were gathering initially outside the Bank of England. What you're now seeing are the scenes just up the road, still on Threadneedle Street, now outside the Royal Bank of Scotland, whereas you'll be aware there has been a little bit of trouble in recent moments. You can see Ben Brown there. Ben, tell us what's happening now.
Right, well, I'll try to, because it's pretty chaotic here. What we're seeing really is protesters, quite a few thousand of them now, and they've been throwing objects through the air, both at the line of police here, who they say are penning them back, actually, because they want to move further up that road. But this line of riot police that's here across Threadneedle Street. Also, some of the windows in the Royal Bank of Scotland just behind me have been smashed. Some of the protesters trying to actually get inside the RBS building and to set up tents there, to camp out there. OK, let's just talk to some of the protesters, perhaps. No, none of them want to talk to us about what's going on here. But what I can let me just talk to you, sir. Can you just explain what you think is happening here?
We've tried to go along this route, protesting peacefully. OK, we've been angry, but you can understand that we've been angry. And basically, the police have just come here and penned us in. From all sides, we can't get out. No one can go out. No one can come in. We can't.
Where is it you want to go to?
That way.
Can I just ask you, why are you here? Why are you protesting?
Well, because I think the government have made an absolute ass of themselves, and look what they're doing. They've encouraged the police to be violent.
Okay, the police are now, as you can see, moving the protesters, trying to push the protesters back, and the protesters are pushing against the police. So you've got a classic standoff here. The police with their riot shields, with their helmets, and actually with batons, although they haven't raised their batons yet, but they are armed with batons. But they are pushing the protesters back down along Threadneedle Street, just outside the Royal Bank of Scotland, the RBS, where several windows have been smashed in the last few minutes. This was a very peaceful demonstration. It's turned increasingly ugly in the last few minutes, and really chaotic scenes. And this is what the police were fearing all along, in fact, when these demonstrations were called for. Financial Fool's Day, as it's been called by the protesters, a pun on April Fool's Day. This is why so many police officers have been deployed on the streets of London. I think if we can just turn the camera over there, we can see real clashes now going on. A lot of pushing and shoving, a lot of argy-bargy between this police line and the protesters as it tries to drive the protesters further down Threadneedle Street, right outside the RBS and also the Bank of England. And it's getting increasingly ugly, as you can see. We haven't really got much choice. We have to stay here because we're kind of sandwiched in. The police are now more objects being thrown by the crowd, and the police trying to push them back. Some of the protesters that we saw a little bit earlier on were actually trying to get inside the RBS building and trying to get inside the RBS. And now beer is being thrown, liquid is being thrown, and increasingly nasty, ugly scenes. There certainly are, in this huge coalition of the G20 meltdown, as it's been called, something like 80 groups, and the police always feared that among those 80 groups there were some pretty hardcore anarchists who were hell-bent on causing trouble. As far as the protesters are concerned, they say that the police have been looking for a fight and looking to provoke violence. So you've got those two opposite viewpoints.
Police holding us in prison. We want to go, but the police are just causing the trouble. You know, we have the right to leave this protest, but the police won't do it. If you try to leave the protest, they baton you with their batons. Is that right? Is that British freedom?
All right, well, that's the view of one of the